The 12th Admirals Cup, the unofficial World Championships of offshore racing for which 19 countries have sent the elite of their boats, skippers and crews.
Defending champion, Britain, with Morning Cloud and team captain Edward Heath. Eclipse, the baby of the team, skippered by Jeremy Rogers. And Blizzard, the biggest boat in the event, with Ernest Dewar.
The top challengers come from Australia, the United States of America, and Germany, all previous winners of the Cup.
Ireland provides a strong challenge, as also does Hong Kong.
Cowes, Isle of Wight on a wet first day of August. 57 boats, 3 in each team, have arrived from all corners of the globe, from North and South America, from Europe, the Orient, and even from behind the Iron Curtain. The event organisers, the Royal Ocean Racing Club, will put them through a series of 5 races. The preparation of each yacht has been intense. Many of the teams, notably the Australians, have been tuning up in the Solent for several weeks beforehand.
And in the belly of every crew member and skipper, there's that knotted feeling of uncertainty. True, many of them have raced against one another here in the Solent and may have some idea of relative performances. But in the last few days, the hyperstars have been arriving from all over the world to join boats to improve their performance. These boats are all of different sizes and shapes. To equate their performances, a complex rule has been evolved, based on hundreds of measurements of each yacht. From this, a time allowance factor is computed. When the yachts race, therefore, their crews know the relativity of their handicap with every other yacht. Complex it certainly is, but it is the only way to allow individuality in design, and that is what the owners of these £250,000 thoroughbreds demand. And it is their demands that have led to a developing improvement in ocean racing yachts, using modern construction methods and space-age materials.
And so to the start of the first race. At this stage, the exact course won't be known, other than it will cover 30 miles around the Solent buoys.
Between numbers 3 and 4.
Soon, details of it will start coming over the radio, and then it's all down to the navigator to work out the best way round, taking into account the notoriously tricky tides and likely wind shifts.
Today's race is as follows. Kilo to port, Charlie to port, Victor to port.
There are more than 40 racing marks around the Solent, each with its own code letters. Within the last half hour, the race committee will have chosen anything up to a dozen of them for the course.
And their object will have been to provide a course that tests the boats and the crews on every point of sailing. Beating, reaching and running will have been balanced to give an all-round competition. The start is all important, and getting to the right place at the right time is the concern of every skipper. The jousting is at close quarters, and sometimes it's too close. And this collision involved 4 yachts, Jubilee from France, Wild Goose of Singapore, Sur of the Argentine, and the Brazilian Madrugada.
All yachts, this is Ocean 1, general recall.
And the worst damage was to Madrugada, out of the series for good. Her crew have to heel the boat to keep this hole out of the water, or she will sink.
By the time of the second attempt at getting them across the line, the wind has got up and mainsails are reefed down. But these yachts are so good, they'll be driven at maximum power.
Is against the wind, demanding of helmsman's skill and navigator's tactics. The boat on the right, Apollo of Singapore, has the right of way over Aries of the USA and makes her tack. Each time a boat goes about, it demands fast and accurate performance by every crew member on board, so their coordination loses the boat the least ground. The remarkable Revolution, a French boat in her 4th Admirals Cup, proving that a new boat each year is not an essential. Steering her is Salisbury sailmaker Bruce Banks, because there are no national barriers. Californians race for Italy, Irish for Singapore and Switzerland, and British sailors for almost every nation. The rules only require 50% of the crew to come from the team's country.
The fleet is spread out coming to the weather mark, and after beating into a fresh wind and strong tide, first there is blizzard for Britain. Now she can start the downhill run without any fear of the rest of them stealing her wind. Even though blizzard is ahead, she's got to be, as she carries the heaviest time penalty. But at this stage, she's well up, first on time and handicap.
Blizzard's was a simple spinnaker hoist, but the American boat Willie War knows she has to go one better to improve. Her skipper, Dennis Connor, calls for a more difficult manoeuvre. First jibing, that's turning and bringing the boom across with the wind astern, and then hoisting the spinnaker. She loses a little in time because it's more difficult to set the kite this way, but she is on a better line for the next mark instantly. Of all the options open to them on the first leg, almost every skipper went to the mainland shore to get into the slack water. The leg across the Solent to the turning mark had to be perfectly judged, or any advantage gained would be thrown away.
Edward Heath's Morning Cloud is going well with her new crew. Larry Marks, a former dinghy world champion, is now Cloud's #1 helmsman, just one of many changes which Mr. Heath has made to this boat which failed to get into the last British team. Also on board is another ex-dinghy champion, Peter Bateman, one of the best sail trimmers in the business. And with an extra £30,000 spent on her before this series, she's once again one of the world's top yachts. Blizzard is now romping away in this first of the 3 inshore races, all of which are about 30 miles long. In these conditions, which are forecast to continue all week, they can expect to complete the course in about 3 hours at an average speed of 10 knots, perhaps even faster if they can get the downhill run right.
The Japanese are back for the second time. In other sailing events, they are beginning to show world class. In the Admirals Cup, however, they lack experience. But they will almost certainly persist until they've gained the experience to give them a proper chance of success. The Irish do have the experience, and this year they'll surprise everyone. The Australians too have the know-how, led by Sid Fisher in Ragamuffin, one of the most experienced Admirals Cup skippers and a Fastnet race winner in 1971. That may look messy, but 2 of the crew are getting that spinnaker down while the rest concentrate on driving Golden Apple of the Sun as fast as possible on her new course after rounding the buoy.
After an outstanding Admirals Cup 2 years ago, Hong Kong are going to be nobody's pushover. Hector Ross has brought over a new Unimara with a highly skilled crew, whose strength lies in an ability to compete with the other two boats in the team as much as the rest of the fleet. Together, all three, Unimara, her sister ship Vanguard, and La Pantera, are drawing out the best in themselves.
Stand on, mate. Stand by to harden up. Come on, harden up.
On board the French Acanito, they make a headsail change, a job that needs close coordination. One man helps speed up hoisting by sweating the halyard, no easy matter on a pitching deck, while another checks that the sail feeds correctly in the forestay groove.
After a reach from the entrance to Southampton Water, America's Aries is round North Ryde Middle, chasing the leaders into the final beat. Not far behind is Tina for Germany, an almost identical boat, but with a slight time advantage, which puts her ahead on handicap.
Jeremy Rogers' Eclipse nearest the camera, and Dave Allen's Imp from America in one of the close combats that became a feature of the Admirals Cup. 2 years ago, Imp was the best individual boat in the series, and Rogers' previous boat was runner-up. Now these two are very closely matched. The crew of Blizzard line the weather rail to help keep the boat upright. The rules say that the torso must be inside the lifelines, but say nothing about the arms and legs. That's why the crew face outboard. The American Willie War is steered by Dennis Conner, a star-class world champion and starting helmsman and tactician on Courageous in the America's Cup. In 1980, he heads another 12-metre defence of that trophy. Acadia for Argentina. This is the boat from which Blizzard was developed. Designer Herman Freres certainly knew just where he could make the improvements, as Blizzard is showing in this race. Aries is a Ron Holland design which gained her selection for America after some excellent races in Florida earlier in the year. In this race, she is not quite living up to her promise. Blizzard leads, and just because she's well ahead, her crew cannot relax for a second. She has to allow all the other boats time, and she needs to be a long way clear to win after the handicaps have been calculated.
For Ernest Dewar, Blizzard's owner and skipper, this is a moment to savour. He's come the long way to reach the pinnacle of offshore racing with selection for his national team. His racing background began in dinghies and small keel boats before entering the ocean racing field. Dewar, a commodity broker, has suffered disappointment with his previous big boats which failed to even get into the British team. Now he's not only made it that far, he's showing the rest of the world's top yachtsmen the way home. Like Mr. Heath, Dewar imported Solent aces, such as Tom Richardson, his #1 helmsman, whose record includes a best individual performance on the top-scoring boat in the Admirals Cup of 4 years ago. Also on board is Bobby Lowen, a tactician with special knowledge of local conditions. Willie War for America chases Blizzard, and these two really have pulled away. Not even the handicap will remove them from first and second place. But it's the position of all three boats in the team which counts. Dennis Conner will be relying on Imp for a good result, even on a day which looks as though it will favour the bigger boats, despite their unfavourable time allowances. The other American boat, Aries, is right behind Willie War on the water. But after the handicap is worked out, she'll drop to 10th. Imp scores a 12th place, and the team are third in this race. But it will be the three Hong Kong boats, La Pantera, Unimara and Vanguard, with a 3rd, 4th and 5th, a phenomenal performance, who take the outright lead. Germany's Tina has done well, but her two teammates have let her down badly, and together they won't even figure in the first half dozen overall. As a team, Britain fares far better. Blizzard takes line honours and wins on handicap. Eclipse overshadows Imp to get 8th place. Cloud comes 14th, and that's enough to gain 2nd place behind Hong Kong. But there are 4 more races to go, and drama the like of which no one could have predicted.
Ocean 1, stand by for a time check. When I say time, it will be 10:30. 10 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Time. 10:30.
The second race, another 30-miler around the Solent with a start off the Royal Yacht Squadron.
Admirals Cup yachts, this is Ocean 1, stand by for a recall message. Following yachts are recalled. Hotel 270 and Hotel 2700.
Both Formidable and Shootaway cross the start line ahead of the gun, and will have to go back and recross the line again. It's a fresh southwesterly breeze for the first beat to windward to the Delta buoy off Lymington. All the boats have reefed mainsails and smaller jibs than they used for the previous race. It makes them slightly easier to tack, but their crews will be working overtime in the early stages as skippers fight to get clear wind, the essential ingredient in any race. The Imp and Eclipse duel is already on. Blizzard has once again found her way to the front. A pattern is established. By the time they reach the first mark, all the crews will be tired. They've tacked up the mainland shore to cheat the foul tide. One man constantly watching the depth sounder, while with flailing arms, the winch winders get the sheets home after each tack.
Hong Kong's sister ships, Unimara and Vanguard, showing what makes a successful team. Both together and pulling each other along. Here, after being hit by a wildly swinging boom.
Blizzard now is well out in front. Behind her, the rest of the fleet close reaching on the leg across the Solent before the start of the second windward leg. Blizzard settles down in the leader's role. On board, all seems routine as the yacht tacks. Down below, the navigator checks the course with the chart and the sailing instructions. Blizzard rounds the Saltmead mark and sets her spinnaker for the run home, to the consternation of all those watching from boats in the spectator fleet and her two teammates from Britain. On board, her crew are oblivious to the mistake they've made, one which is going to have a marked effect on her placing in this race. The crew's only worry is to get that spinnaker drawing properly. If only they knew the truth. The navigator on Acadia, the next boat, must be double-checking the course. He will have the West Leak buoy on the other side of the Solent to round before hoisting a spinnaker and running back to the clipper mark. And so, of course, should the navigator of Blizzard. Even if someone on board Blizzard was looking, they might still believe that Acadia's crew have got it wrong. But not when they see Williwaw and Tina chasing her. In the process, these two are engaged in their own personal duel, with Williwaw pouring dirty wind from her sails onto Tina's to endeavour to force her to tack to make the mark. The score, Williwaw 1, Tina 0. A passing submarine adds to the hazards for the fleet, but meanwhile on board Blizzard the chart is out and the mistake acknowledged and strategy planned to rectify the horror.
Blizzard won't have a prayer of making up the deficit as the two American boats, Williwaw and well away from her Aries, romp away, carving through the rest, still trying to make the penultimate mark. On the day, it's the Australians, led by Sid Fisher and Ragamuffin, who revel in the conditions so reminiscent of the boisterous chop they frequently encounter outside Sydney Heads. Hong Kong with La Pantera, together with Unimara and Vanguard, hold on to their overall lead. The race is won, though, by Impetuous, Ragamuffin and the fast-improving Police Car for Australia. But the real honours should have been Ireland's. Regardless was first, Golden Apple of the Sun second, and but for Inishanir's disaster, having had a crewman winched off by helicopter, they would have taken all the spoils. In this racing, one good performance, as in the case of Arcadia for Argentina, isn't enough to put the team in a challenging position. It's all three boats that count, and this isn't going to be the South Americans' year.
Oh, the agony of a moment like this, when everything seems to have gone very wrong. And oh, the ecstasy of one like this, to finish first and all's well with the world.
But not quite for the Brazilians. As if the loss of the hold Madrugada was bad enough, Winsome Gold, the British boat chartered to replace her, had her mast buckled, and that finally put paid to the Brazilians' chances.
This race has taken its toll in men, masts, and more particularly sails. It will need to be round-the-clock working by the sailmakers to repair all the damage in time for the Channel race.
And going into that, the overall team positions. First, Hong Kong. Second, America. Third, Australia. Fourth, Britain. And fifth, Ireland. It's still anyone's cup. A great spectacle for followers of Admirals Cup racing, but not so easy for the competitors to make an impression on each other as the light to moderate southwesterly sends the fleet away on a spinnaker run towards Brighton. The 200-mile Channel race guarantees the crews at least one night at sea. More importantly, it counts double points.
Bunching is inevitable. The faster boats are slowed down by the wind shadows of the slower ones, and all the yachts proceed at much the same speed down the eastern Solent to the forts and the Nab Tower. It's not until they're in wide waters that they can expect clear air. One exception to the rule was Golden Apple of the Sun. Her Irish crew took her away from the fleet to get clear air early on, and now they're right at the forefront. The rest trail in her wake. Vanina takes her rounding of the no man's land fort extremely close and switches from Spinnaker to Genoa for the leg to the Nab Tower.
By the time they arrive there, the fleet is beginning to split up, but some yachts aren't placed where they'd like to be. Willie War is still trailing Ireland's Golden Apple, and, for once, Tina of Germany. Blizzard, which theoretically should be the front runner, is still some way behind Arcadia and Red Rock, both of Argentina. After 50 miles, they're still fairly well bunched to the Portobello Buoy just east of Brighton. With a quarter of the distance covered, the race looks like being a benefit for the smaller boats. If they can stay within sight of the big uns, they'll win hands down on handicap. Black clouds gathering on the horizon, though, would ensure a wet and windy crossing for all of them on the 90-mile passage to Cherbourg.
As night falls, the race goes on, and there's no slackening of concentration. Crews must be fed, watches kept, and sails changed. It's now that the really good crews gain the advantage.
Keep her on the window. Can we get that number 2 prepared? Have it on deck.
Of course, it's much more difficult to do things in the dark, and this is when all the crew training begins to tell. Familiarity with the gear is of paramount importance, but still everything must be checked and checked again, and the navigator works the clock round to make certain the boat's on the right track.
Far from Cherbourg, the Hamble, in fact, and Morning Cloud limps home without the use of her rudder. The stock broke halfway across the channel. Mr. Heath's experiment with carbon fibre proves a failure, and by having to retire and therefore not scoring any points, the British team loses any hope whatsoever of retaining the cup.
Fitting a carbon fibre rudder was indeed a gamble, but one which many of the serious contenders were to take. Using this experimental material makes the rudder lighter than conventional ones, and also buoyant. This has the effect of lifting the stern of the boat at measuring time and improving the time allowance for handicap.
Line honours go to Sweden's Midnight Sun, which completes the race in just over 30 hours. But this is something of a hollow victory. By the time the computer has done its work, she'll be relegated right to the back of the field. This just hasn't been a race for the big boats, and America, with a couple of them, slide way down the table to 3rd overall. Hong Kong similarly, and overall they drop to 4th. The most impressive results are scored by Australia, which lifts them to 2nd, and the Irish, who've been a threat for some years, and now, for the first time in any Admirals Cup, take the lead.
When I say time, it will be 10:30.
No matter what the time or however a race is scheduled, you can't start a major event on the squadron line when a container ship is occupying the best part of it. For the Admirals Cuppers, it means a short delay to the start of the third inshore race. When they did start, there was yet another delay.
Admirals Cup yachts. General recall.
Police car was hit by Indigo, and one of her crewmen is overboard with a broken arm.
Come up with supplies. Police car over.
We have the injured man aboard the yacht outraged. We're coming into the squadron step. Please have ambulance stand by.
Now they really are away, and among them is Police Car despite the damage on her starboard side. But Indigo, holed in the bow, is out of the race, and that now eliminates the entire Brazilian team. 2 yachts literally knocked out, and a third withdrawn because of personality clashes. A sad end for a country which has brought so much colour to the Admirals Cup in the past. Arcadia, which incidentally was an American team reject but snapped up by the Argentinians, benefits from an excellent start to lead at the first mark. But the pressure's on from the pursuing pack for the long beat to the western end of the Solent, followed by a short reach and then a run back to the east.
It's Clipper Boy off Hill Head that marks the end of the run. The battered Australian police car is going well, heading Hong Kong's La Pantera at the start of the second beat.
Arcadia starts the final run, proving once again that if a big boat can get clear, then the rest have little chance of catching her. The one boat that shouldn't have let her get away, bearing in mind the similarity of design, is Blizzard. But she's still 2 minutes behind and has yet to make the windward mark.
The choice between wheel and tiller steering is one of personal preference and, to some extent, the size of boat. Most helmsmen would agree that the tiller is better for sailing to windward, but downwind in a blow, there's nothing like a wheel to give you positive steering. It's positive steering that's needed here. Rounding this buoy from a windward leg onto a run and dodging the other boats is tricky enough. But add a sluicing Solent tide against the wind and the whole business requires the master's touch to gain those seconds which make all the difference in racing. Imp, which will be the first to hoist a spinnaker, has jibed but must avoid the boats coming up to the mark. Her helmsman does it, just, but see how she has begun to pull away from Inisheneer and Big Shadow, who rounded the buoy immediately behind her. They were forced wider, and it's Imp's skipper who scores top marks for his manoeuvres.
Regardless for Ireland trailing Imp, but only by a matter of seconds, and by the end of this race she'll head the individual point scores.
One way to gain an extra advantage on a run is to ride a bigger boat's quarter wave. Here, Willy War uses her teammate Aries to advantage. But this is no way to go. The Japanese Kotarutaru is in all sorts of trouble. So too is Arcadia. Not only does she have her spinnaker to drop and the Clipper Boy to round, but she has the added hazard of a smaller boat racing in Cowsweek to contend with. And she doesn't have right of way because the smaller boat is ahead.
With 23 miles gone, 3/4 of the way round, the race is becoming processional with only the occasional individual joust going on. Imp has lost her old sparring partner, Eclipse, only to be taken on by Australia's Impetuous as the team from down under start to come out on top.
The Polish have entered a team for the third time, and this is their best effort yet. Not content with having 2 boats from a recognised American designer, Doug Peterson, they have here in Cetus a real homegrown product, designed and built in Poland. And in truth, they don't seem to be having any more trouble than their rivals from this side of the Iron Curtain.
Once again, the strong winds in the Solent are proving to be of advantage to the big boats. America's Willie Waugh and Aries will be first and second on handicap. Arcadia's line honours won't be enough either to raise the hopes of Argentina. A good result by Blizzard, followed by Eclipse and Morning Cloud, gives Britain second place in the race, but still only 7th overall, and showing what might have been but for earlier misfortunes. Still, though, it's the Irish who go into the Fastnet as team and individual leaders.
This, however, was a champagne race, and the bad news for Mums, the sponsors, was that Dennis Connor, who skippered the winning boat and won his weight in champagne, topped the scales at 16 stones.
On August the 11th, the 18 teams left in the Admirals Cup set off for the 5th and final event, the 600-mile Fastnet race from Cowes to the coast of Southern Ireland and back to Plymouth. After the conditions they'd experienced in the previous week, the strong winds on that day didn't deter any of them from continuing in this marathon. But no one could have foreseen what the elements had in store. In the early hours of August the 14th, the fleet was spread out between the Scillies and the Fastnet Rock when it was hit by a mighty storm. It didn't just affect the Admirals Cup yachts, but 250 other boats which were also taking part in this biannual event. What happened that night overshadowed everything else. Racing became of secondary importance, as 15 men on yachts in the accompanying flotilla lost their lives. It was the blackest night ever in ocean racing history. Of the 303 yachts which left Cowes, 5 were lost, 19 abandoned, and 136 crewmen rescued. Only 86 boats completed the course, while all around them an unprecedented search and rescue operation was going on, and anxious relatives waited for news.
Apparently Unimar and La Pantera are okay, and Vanguard, I know that she's all right. Just tell them. Yes, they're all fine.
As it happens, all those on Admirals Cup yachts survived, perhaps because these craft were big enough to take such enormous seas. It was the smaller boats which unfortunately took the biggest pounding, as they were in the eye of the storm. The handshakes were simple but poignant expressions of everyone's heartfelt thanks to the rescue services. While the crew of Golden Apple was safe at Culrose, their yacht was being towed into Newlyn, the only Admirals Cup boat to be abandoned. Meanwhile, many of the other yachts had made a run for shelter in Southern Ireland. The damage told its own story of how they were fortunate to survive.
We broke our rudder. We endeavoured to set up a temporary rudder system, and this was unsuccessful due to the very extreme seas. We lay hull for about 8 hours and again endeavoured to set up the jury rudder system, this time with success, and as you can see here on our transom, and we ran up to Cork in the space of about 12 hours.
Another Irish boat, Regardless, was also forced to retire with gear failure.
The one thing I picked was a good crew, and at no time was there any question of really being in danger. You know, it was rough, it was not nice, but we were always safe.
It was much the same story from Britain's most renowned ocean racer, Edward Heath, though Morning Cloud was able to complete the course.
Down below, of course, there was chaos because the chaps who were off watch were thrown out of their bunks onto the leeward side of the ship, and I was at the navigating table at the time. I was thrown right across the ship. The navigator was thrown out of his bunk, and so on.
Were you in danger of being sunk?
No. A certain amount of water came in, but it was not a danger that we were going to see, not at all.
Inevitably, this will be an Admirals Cup remembered more for the Fastnet tragedy than the endurance, stamina and skill which typifies the pinnacle that the sport of ocean racing has achieved in recent years. Even with these thoughts in mind, there was to be a standing ovation for the Australians when they received the cup for winning this series. But before that, Jim Hardy had said it all when he first stepped ashore at Plymouth.
Well, I've experienced similar conditions in Bass Strait, but I've never had the same waves so close together. That was the big difference between racing at home and in the Irish Sea. It's my third time in the Fastnet, and it really was an experience.
How the crew?
They're great. There wasn't a harsh word on our boat, and I think there's a lot in that in a crisis.
So you're pleased to be back?
Very
celebrations?
much so, very much so, but very sad to the families of the guys that were lost at sea. That really, has taken away pretty naturally the great thrill that we as Australians think we've had in this series.